When you're scaling objects in Inkscape, something that's very useful to know about is these 4 little buttons you get, which are put under this effect option. So if you hover over them, you get a little preview of what they do. So this first one scales the stroke width by the same proportion. This deals with rounded corners, this deals with gradients, and this deals with patterns. And what these do is they make sure that these elements will scale in proportion with this object when you scale it. And the best way to demonstrate it is to actually just do it. If I really zoom out of this violin, I can now go Edit, select All and All Layers, and if I now hold on the Control key and scale this, so I've scaled this by quite a lot, probably about 3.5 times. When I let go of the mouse, you see that what we see is an exact same version of the same thing, it's just much bigger. But everything else looks exactly the same. If I undo that, and then I turn off each of these buttons, so this is the stroke width, these are the rounded corners, gradients, and patterns. Incidentally, rounded corners and patterns we don't have any, but we'll see the effect just the same. If I now hold down the Control key and scale, your preview is going to look the same. But when you let go, suddenly everything looks very different. So why is that? If we really zoom in, all of these strokes are still there, and this gradient that was going across the back of this violin is still there. But because we turned off these options, they stayed the same size and with the same settings that they had when this was a very small violin. So obviously, because the image in general is much bigger, they all look proportionately much smaller. So that's something that you might want to bear in mind when you're scaling an object. By default, these are all on. If you find that you scale something and suddenly everything just looks completely different, it's a good chance that it's because some of these options have been turned off. But it's also a really good way to improve the way your images look. And in this particular case, personally, I really didn't like the way that these lines looked. I felt that all the strokes in this image were just way too thick. And so having scaled it like this, I find that they look a lot better. And let's say I now want to take it back to this original size. Remember, these were all turned off when I scaled this. If I now turn stroke widths back on, I can now go Edit, select All and All Layers, and again I'm going to hold the Control key, scale this right down, and there you go. If we now zoom in, we have a much better result. All of our strokes are nice and small. Notice that the gradient still looks the same as it did. The reason for that is that when I rescaled this, in other words when I made this small again, I left this scale gradients with the scaling off. So the gradient actually just stayed with the same settings that it originally had. But overall, I think this is a much better looking image. So if you want to make all of the strokes slightly thinner or even thicker, this is a really easy and quick way of doing it all in one hit, as opposed to having to select each one and then change its settings individually.